Hello and welcome to my podcast. Today I've got an absolute powerhouse joining me, Sarah Bish Bishop. Now, Bish is one of those rare people who can walk into any business and instantly see what and who needs to change in order for that business to grow. She's the founder of Recruit Recruit Ltd, and for nearly 3 decades she's been helping startups, scale-ups, and solo founders build brilliant teams that fuel real business growth. Known as the Swiss Army knife of business growth, Bish blends her deep experience in sales, leadership, and recruitment with a kind of energy, humour, and no nonsense honesty that makes her an unforgettable guest. She's helped countless founders go from scrappy beginnings to thriving, scalable enterprises, embedding recruitment right into the DNA of their business. And she's a passionate advocate for neurodiverse thinking, leadership development, and fearless communication. In today's episode, we're going to dive right into what it really takes to find, grow, and keep the right people, and why your business can grow only as fast as your team does. So get ready for plenty of practical wisdom, a few laughs, and some straight talking insights. Sarah Bishop, welcome to the podcast. It's lovely to have you here today.
That's brilliant, Paul. Thank you very much. And wow, what an introduction. No pressure, right? No pressure.
Not at all. So I know you've helped a startup grow from 30 million in just from zero rather to 30 million in, I think it was 21 months. Now, what was that journey really like, and what were the biggest lessons you took from it? Because that's a hell of an achievement.
Yeah, it was very interesting is the first thing that probably comes to mind, and chaotic. So we were in very exceptional circumstances. It was, at pandemic time, so 2020, and actually a friend of mine's brother, who has a couple of private GP practices down south of the country. He had one of his private patients, one of his practices very close to Pinewood Studios, and one of his private patients came in and said, "Look, I'm not ill, but I'm working on a production at Pinewood. We really need to get filming up and running again. Can you come in and do COVID testing, so that we can, put some protocols in to keep everybody safe, and then we can get production up and running again?" Dr. Rick was like, "I don't see why not." So he sort of went along to meet the production team at Pinewood. And the film that they were working on was Jurassic World Dominion. So it was one of the first, in fact, it may have been the first major production, like major movie production that went back into production, and then was then completed. So their business just exploded almost overnight, as you can imagine. So at Pinewood Studios, Disney were also doing the live action Cinderella film at the same time. And it was like, "Are you filming again?" "Yeah, we are." "How are you doing that?" And kind of word spread, and it all started to kind of snowball. So we got involved quite early, and largely because my very good friend Vanessa de Koofer is the sister of Dr. Rick, and she's been a friend for over 20 years and has also been a client of mine, because she was an employment lawyer who then went into HR, dual qualified, and I worked with her when she was working at some big food manufacturing businesses and various places. So she got me in because she knew, I could be trusted with the recruitment and to find the right people, but also largely because she always says, "Oh, you know everyone." We call it like the 6 degrees of Bish. So, because I've been networking and whatever for decades, and I'm that, the nutter on the bus that makes you have a conversation with them whether you want it or not. So I do know lots of people. And she said to Rick, "Look, it will just be really handy as and when need things, rather than having to Google and take a risk with somebody, just ask Bish, and she'll, within 24 hours, if she doesn't know somebody, she'll know somebody who knows somebody." So they started getting really, really very busy. And um, I don't know if you've ever worked in film production, or any of your listeners ever worked with like media businesses like that. But when it's the producers, the production companies, the directors, it's all very much, "We need this and we need it now." And it doesn't matter how impossible it sounds, you just need to go away and make it happen. There's not, no isn't really in their vocabulary. So it was all kind of, you know, getting a bit out of hand, and they needed people. It was Your Doctor Film and Media was the business that kind of grew out of this need. They needed people that were going to be the interface between the production company and the provision of the COVID testing, who sat as like almost like account managers. Um, and they needed to be able to think on their feet, work quite long and antisocial hours, and deal with what can be very tricky people. And it was kind of a perfect storm, to be honest with you, Paul, because loads of people in hospitality had been laid off. I immediately thought, anybody who's worked at any level of kind of seniority within event management or hospitality would be the ideal kind of profile for these roles. And it turns out we were right. One of our first placements was a guy called Sergio, who what had been for 13 years the event manager at the Royal Opera House in Covent Garden. Had another woman, Laura Jackson, who'd been like the head of entertainment on Disney cruise ships and also Disney over in America. We had another guy, Sam Dunham, who had worked a lot in hospitality, but also was a writer and producer himself on like independent stuff. So got the industry and kind of understood how it worked, albeit not usually on like big Hollywood blockbuster
Yeah.
kind of thing. So these were some of our first placements, and we were literally throwing people at it, And I always say, I think I always accredit to it too. Sorry, I can't speak today. I generally accredit this ability to go in and see very quickly what's needed to being autistic and ADHD, and it's just like it just seems really big, complex issues. I can kind of see through it really quickly.
Yeah.
Okay. Trying to organize myself to take the dog out, get dressed in the morning and go and buy a pint of milk, completely different matter, right? But really big, complex stuff, love it. Water off a duck's back. So very early on, as they were kind of describing it, even though we didn't really know what was going to happen, it became clear to me that I thought, look, this thing is probably going to explode. We don't know how long the pandemic's going to last, but I've just got this feeling that this thing is going to get bigger and bigger, and you're going to need people that can step up as the company grows bigger. And those were our sort of first 3 to 5 placements, and that's exactly what happened. They all ended up either managing directors or heads of specialist productions and
Wow.
things. So the whole process, it was a bit chaos, when we placed the first HR manager, she was like, "Oh, I haven't got, there's these 6 people, we haven't even got CVs on record for them." And I was like, "Oh, Mandy, we didn't bother sending CVs. I just, said, right, these 4 are coming in for COVID tests for swabbing tomorrow, and they're starting on Thursday or Monday or whatever." I said, we were literally throwing people in. Um, and it was kind of a little bit, let's just make it up as we go along, which I kind of like working like that.
Yeah.
People may say it's winging it, but I've got 30 years of experience to draw on, so it's not really winging it. And it was chaos for some time, but it was kind of like an organized chaos. It was very reactive. But then within the first sort of 5 or 6 months, I think there was this realization that actually, right, it looks like this COVID thing's going to go on for a bit longer than we thought. Um, and we need to look at what else we can build out of it for when it's all over. So initially, I think it was kind of like everyone was like, "Yeah, let's make hay while the sun shines, and it'll all be over in a year or two." And then it kind of started to evolve. So, the business ended up creating 2 businesses that are still going. So there's Time, which is a private medical provider, and Viva Health Laboratories, who we ended up getting them the people in to build their own laboratories because the government labs just couldn't keep up with the testing protocols in the timelines that they needed to turn it around. So from our perspective, it was really reactive. I loved working like that, but then at some stage we came and sat down and said, right, we now need a bit more of a strategic approach, and that's what we took. So I loved it. I kind of miss it. I kind of miss that chaos and kind of not knowing what's going to happen from one day to the next, because as well as the growth trajectory of the company in the film and media industry, it's like you'll get a schedule on Monday, and by Tuesday afternoon, if not earlier, it's like, no, no, that schedule's out of the window. Haven't you got the other one? And suddenly, well, we've got a crowd scene with 300 extras in 2 days' time, and you've got to get them all swabbed and tested and the results back, and all of this sort of thing. So it was also really interesting to watch how the industry works.
Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah, it was great.
I find it fascinating because I'm an ex-project manager, and I always think whenever I look at a film production, I always think that's one hell of a project because you've got resources, expenses, people, and you've got to get them all together at the right time in the right place to do the right things. And in software, there's something called Agile, which is like a very fast way of software development. In the old days, people used to do loads of planning, write it all down, and by the time they got around to coding it, the requirements had changed, so that never worked. It's just hence Agile was introduced. But with planning, it's great to be able to do things on the fly, especially in that kind of environment, which is really exciting, and you're having to sort of firefight and just get things done. But sometimes a bit of planning, there could be just that one critical thing that stops everything in its tracks that you have to be mindful of. So you're kind of rushing along at high speed, getting things done, getting people in the right place. But you've still got to be aware that there's that one, whatever that one thing might be, that one critical thing that could actually stop the whole show. So to be able to think on your feet and cater for all that is amazing. And I'm just really impressed that you had that opportunity to see all these people that they need to recruit and thinking, oh, hospitality, lots of people made redundant from hospitality, all the right skills. So that's pure genius to spot that identity, that opportunity straight away and find the right people to plug in. That's just that's amazing. It's brilliant.
Yeah, thank you. It's like loads of people were saying, "Oh, why did you think of that?" And I'm like, "Well, to me, it's like really obvious. It's just obvious. It pings into my brain." But it
Mm.
was, and it's funny you used the word agile actually, Paul, because this is one of the things that I said that one of the things that we were actually able to deliver was agility in it because they trusted us to look at everything. I mean, we built everything, the client relationship team, finance team, HR team, IT team. I hate interviewing IT people, so I just phone my good because they just give me. I love lovely people. Just give me too much detail. I'm like, just give me a high level overview because you start giving me the detail, my little brain starts, la la la, and I don't know, Little House on the Prairie theme tune, and do penguins have knees, and all these thoughts coming into my brain. So I'm luckily because I've been in the industry for a very long time. There are other independent recruiters that I work with and I collaborate with. So rather than the business going to various different specialist agencies, they kind of trusted me with everything, from the scientists, as I say, and IT, to HR and sales and marketing, which is kind of more our day-to-day bag. And because of that, we had an agility. We could move really quickly. I had people who had great networks and contacts within their specialist niches, um, and we weren't working in silos.
Yeah,
So we had much better transparency on what the other people in the other teams would be like, and I really believe that that made it a much more cohesive
yeah.
thing and an approach way to working.
It makes a lot of sense because I think I always stand back for a lot of things in life, and I think, okay, well, all this meticulous planning, people spend a lot of time, a lot of money planning stuff, building things, ships, buildings, all the rest of it. But then you think, well, how much money have they spent doing that? And I think Elon Musk is a prime example. So he took rockets. NASA used to build rockets and spend years planning them and building them and costing him hundreds of millions of dollars. And he took that same thing, got rid of all the bureaucracy, the planning, and knocked things out in bloody a tenth of the time for the tenth of the price. So it's kind of a bit of a parallel. He kind of got rid of all that bureaucracy and all the sort of meticulous planning and just got on with it. And look at where he is
Yeah.
now. The results speak for themselves. So I always wonder that, in chaos, sometimes, oh God, that's total chaos. But sometimes chaos is actually very efficient because it gets the result done very, very quickly. And people that plan things meticulously, all right, it all went very nicely and very, very formally, but it took you 3 years, and these guys did it in a year. So
Absolutely. And I think you're right. I think we can overcomplicate most things. Yeah. And that chaos for me, I think it means that you can't overthink it. And, you know, I do think that people generally have fairly good instincts, and we
Yeah.
have the good instinct and then we rationalize it away, don't we, by overthinking or self-doubt or whatever. So I do think, I do know that for me personally, that kind of that chaos and that reactivity can be really good because then I don't second guess myself and I know that my instincts are pretty good. So, and I think what I've learned over probably the last decade is to trust that more. So
Mm.
now, even when it's not chaotic, even when it's something that we're looking at in a much more strategic way and a kind of future proofing and succession planning and all those things, I've learned now not to rationalize a lot of my instinct away, because earlier in my career I would do that. I'd overthink it, I'd rationalize it away. 2 months down the line, something would go tits up, and I'd be like, "Yeah, do you know what? That's because I didn't go with my gut."
Mm.
So,
Interesting.
yeah.
Very, very interesting. No, there's a lot to be said for gut instincts. And again, people have got different labels for it, haven't they? And I know you look back at some of the things in my life and some really significant things that, my gut was telling me one thing, but my rational mind was telling me something else. And my rational mind overrode my instinct. And that particular thing, well, I can tell you a little story actually. I bought a hi-fi business many, many years ago, Sound and Vision. We're going back quite a long time. I had this phone call, and it was the negotiation on the property was proving to be quite complicated. I had this phone call from the landlord, who was a nasty piece of work. I didn't like him, and my gut was saying, "Paul, walk away, just walk away." And I put the
Mm,
phone down, and I thought, "Oh, this is not good. This is not good." And then my rational mind said, "Paul, if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. Just get on with it." But it did go nipple skyward later on
yeah.
for various reasons. And I look back and I God, if I that conversation, it clearly is still in my mind now because it was a turning point. If I'd listened to my
Mm,
gut instinct, it wouldn't have turned into the saga and sorry loss of money that it did. But so
yeah.
I'm a bit ADHD and I do rationalize stuff. And I think a lot of people have lost touch with their instinct, think, well, hang on, yes, all the numbers add up, but there's still some uneasy feeling that you think, I don't, but you can't always put your finger on it because it's not a tangible thing. It's like we see all the police movies. Well, I went with my gut instinct, yeah, but we can't tell that to a jury because, but
Yeah.
there's to be said for it, isn't it? Because a gut instinct, it's there to protect us and to serve us well in life, as it did.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And and it does, it reacts to, we rationalize it away, don't we? About, well, it's just a gut feeling, and we're not basing this on fact or data or information. And I don't think that's true. I think our gut actually recognizes a lot of data and information that we unconsciously and subconsciously imbibe, I suppose it was. I know
Yeah,
before we started recording, talking about micro expressions and things that we can pick up on, that perhaps AI may even do a better job at some stage. And I think that there's a lot to be said for that, and that's what the gut reacts to. So we do rationalize it away as, oh, that not being based on proper information. But
yeah,
I think sometimes the gut recognizes better unfiltered, pure, true information. So,
yeah.
yeah, it's a very interesting subject. I could talk about this sort of stuff all
Oh,
day.
well, me too. I love it. I was Well, actually, various things. Actually, I remember that there was a really good TV series with Tim Roth called "Lie to Me," and he would analyze micro expressions, which is we could talk about that. But I watched another really interesting documentary as well recently, and it's about the gut, and it's talking about how much intelligence there is in our stomach and all the cells. This is quite spiritual because we get into the cellular level and how all our emotions are carried in our cells throughout our body, and gut feeling. Obviously, that came from I don't know where that saying arose from, came from a long, long time ago, but we have got intelligence in our stomach. That's an actual.
Mm,
So gut instinct is something that I think in the modern world has been suppressed because we've got all this technology. Our ancestors knew about it, so that if they're in a jungle, their gut instinct, their senses would be telling them that there was danger, even if they couldn't see it or hear it. And animals have it, don't they? You hear about
yeah,
the before the tsunami arrived, the animals were already getting into safety, and the humans are going, "What's going on? We don't know about that." Because they just didn't have that sixth sense, or they maybe they did, but they weren't in tune with it. If they'd listened to their
yeah,
instinct, they maybe have got out of danger. So I find that all really interesting because it still applies, but we're just so busy and we've got so much technology and we're not taught how to listen to ourselves. So Very important.
Yeah. Yeah, couldn't agree more. I think that, I mean, there are some people that have started calling the gut now the second brain, haven't they? So
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. But anyway, this, that experience apparently it led you to write your book, Scale Up. So what inspired you to put those lessons into print, and what's the core message you want readers to walk away with?
shameless plug. Thank you for that. Yeah.
No
So,
problem.
okay, so there were two reasons to put it into print, and probably the first and the most compelling was because I suppose I just got a little bit tired and jaded of seeing fantastic founders and entrepreneurs. And this doesn't have to be people that have got loads of funding and are going to build the next Google or whatever. It could be a solo entrepreneur, sole trader, somebody who's doing, got a great idea, doing a really good job, or just providing, a fantastic service, and them keep failing, basically, or not reaching the levels that they could do because they quite frankly kept I can't even dress it up, fucking up their growth by either not recruiting at all or doing a really poor job of it. So, and trying to handle it all themselves, and or then funded founders who quite often have got quite a lot of, and they've got VC backing, they've got some great advisors. And I was really surprised at how often the people strategy side of it kind of was left out. So it was largely to provide a really simple, straightforward, step-by-step guide. Look, here's how to do it. You don't have to overcomplicate it. Here's how you decide what you need. Here's how you go and find those people. Here's what you need to do. Should you use a professional recruiter? Ways to find out whether that's going to work for you, how to get the best out of them, all those sorts of things. I just wanted to put it in one place, not too, I mean, it's not massive, that was quite easy and accessible to read. And then the second reason was because, as somebody who's like pretty much never finished anything in her life, like I've still got geography homework from 1988 outstanding. I just wanted to see if I could bloody finish a book. So, and I have got to do a little shout out here for Inspired by Publishing, because if I hadn't done it through them and had my writing mentor, Angela, that accountability piece, it probably wouldn't have got finished. So I had Friday meetings with Angela, and nearly every single chapter of this book was completed on a Thursday evening,
Wow.
with me going, looking at my calendar, and then going, ah, bugger.
Oh my goodness. So a little message. So if you're all geography teachers out there listening today, when are you going to have that homework submitted?
Yeah, don't tempt her. I'm still in touch by Auntie June. By Auntie June.
I'm gonna have to
So
look because that's quite relevant for me at the moment, but that's another story. So how does I mean there's a lot of I've worked with a lot of outsourcing people in the likes of the Philippines and South Africa. So how long's a piece of string? But is it still possible to apply the same recruitment techniques when you don't actually meet someone in the flesh and have them in the same room as when you just meet them or interview them on Zoom online? Is it still the same kind of approach?
it is. I have found that I've adjusted my interviewing technique a bit for I do it mostly now, well, pretty much exclusively actually online.
Okay.
And I have adjusted my technique because I found that for whatever reasons, some people can tend to be a bit more clipped and concise when they're being interviewed with the screen here. I mean, you may have found it when you're interviewing people for the podcast. People don't always tend to elaborate as much. People, I don't know whether there's because there's that kind of barrier almost where you're not in real life in person, so it doesn't feel quite as peoply.
Yeah.
Um, or sometimes I think we were talking earlier as well, weren't we, before we started recording about, somebody from Amazon, a delivery or something could turn up. I think people also have in the back of their mind, oh God, is my partner going to run through in their pants to make a cup of tea? Is the dog going to bark? Is that, all of these things. So I think that one of the things, whereas if a person that I interview now has answered in a way that doesn't elaborate enough for my liking, I will now ask some more questions that drill down. Whereas years ago, if that had been a face-to-face one, I kind of would have said I'd expect them to give that depth of answer as standard. So it's, yeah, I think it's one of those things to really get the best out of people. You need to adjust how you interview and how you interact online. And sometimes that's just drawing a bit more out instead of going, I shouldn't have to ask this, that you do actually draw it out of the candidates.
Another small thing that's just occurred to me as you've been talking here is that I think if I look back to the traditional face-to-face interview in the UK, I would go for an interview. You'd arrive on time, you'd go to the reception, you'd sit down, maybe be offered a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, waiting for the whatever. The receptionist would announce that you've arrived to the person who's going to recruit to interview. They would come down and meet you. So there's all that preamble. So you're kind of, firstly, you're getting used to the environment before you having the interview. Then the person comes down, they'll shake your hand, offer you a cup of tea, or take you up the lift, or walk you up the stairs, and say, "Oh, how's your journey?" You have all this sort of preamble, just a bit of an icebreaker. So you're kind of getting to know that person a little bit before you have the interview. So by the time you transition into the interview room and you sit down with your notepad, it's kind of a natural flow. So you've built up a bit of familiarity and a little bit of comfort. Whereas on Zoom, it's like switch on the camera. Hello, how are you? No, mate, there's none of that preamble, that getting to know you
Yeah.
informally, even if it's just for a couple of minutes. But I think those few minutes together are quite powerful. What do you think?
I think you're absolutely right. And it's great that you've recognized that because a lot of people don't. So when we're interviewing, and I want to get it out for the new year, hopefully. I'm building a online course of how to interview effectively. That preamble is really important. And it's so when I interview or any of my colleagues, we interview that's the first part. So, and we never interview for the job role that we're looking for at the beginning. Of course, we talk about the specific role that somebody's interested in and to make sure that they're right for it. But I would say probably 90% of our interviews are much more around the person, the values, the motivations, the kind of dream scenarios, their thought, how they, their thought processes. We get them to walk us through how they make decisions, all of these things that build a much bigger picture of who that person truly is. Because it's one thing putting somebody into a business who can do the job, but if they're not going to enjoy it because the culture's not right or the values aren't right or it just isn't ticking their true motivators, it it all goes. I think I'm going to steal your nipples skyward. I quite like that. It's much more polite than my usual vernacular. But, I'm a gobby cockney who does drop the odd F bomb, to be honest. Not that odd, to be fair. So I'm actually on my best behaviour. I think I've only managed it once, so
Very
might need
impressed.
a bleeping bleeper button. So yeah, so I think that's really, really important that 90% of your interview is about drawing out who that person is, and how they operate and what brings them joy, what lights them up, what gets the best out of them, rather than can you do the job? Because I think if we all think back about people who haven't worked out, if you do a big list of it, why they've left or have been sacked or haven't made probation, very rarely do you have they couldn't do the job on that list. It's usually stuff like bad team fit, perhaps unreliable, all these sorts of things. It's very rarely simply they just couldn't do the job.
That's interesting because I lost I was on a probation period with one company many years ago, um, and I was told I was a poor cultural fit. But that was a bit controversial because they put me. We all had to, everyone. It was quite a big company, but everyone had to do an online. Wasn't I wouldn't call it an exam, but it was like I wouldn't even call it was a survey. But it was answering questions about culture, and there was one question about I think this they created a scenario and you had a choice of answers. And I think the scenario they painted was something like your work colleagues regularly go down the pub on a Friday night. There's been a new Asian Muslim employee who's joined the company. Would you invite him with you down the pub? And I think I
Yeah,
said, I think I
yeah,
said yes. but apparently the right answer was no, or the answer that they wanted was no. And I
But
was
why? They could drink lemonade.
exactly what I said, but I was kind of chastised for that because they said, well, their view was, oh, it's disrespectful to the religion. You weren't being, and I said, well, look, anyway, I'm probably with you on this. 'Cause I said, well, look, they're new to the company. He can have a cup, you can have a Coca-Cola or a drink of water. We're all socialising. It's just a place to visit. It doesn't have to have anything to drink. And I said, he's not we're not being offensive, but they had a different attitude. Oh, you could be offending his religious values, all of that. So anyway, I think that was the reason that got me because I refused to give the answer they wanted. I gave my own answer.
Yeah.
So and then 2 days later, I was gone. And I think that's
Wow.
what
I mean, it's bonkers as well, isn't it? Because I mean, that so isn't like a yes no answer. I mean, it's because you'd frame it, wouldn't you? You wouldn't just go, "Yo, do you want to come to the pub?" Or
it was a multiple choice. I remember the question
yeah,
was a multiple choice, and but I'd given the wrong answer. But yeah, so
yeah,
that was quite
crazy.
quite a while ago. But yeah, I mean, it's all that stuff, cultural fit and attitudes, and values. It's sometimes those things don't always get found out until you're actually in that environment, unfortunately, which is really frustrating, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, and it's a bit too far down the line. And also, if you're interviewing for this job spec that you've got, both the interviewer and the interviewee have got unconscious bias because they're going to answer to, in the head, I really want this job. So I'm going to
Mm.
answer everything to make you think I'm right for this job. And you might want the job, but actually, if you knew more about the culture and, how you operate, so I had a guy, this was years and years ago, and I'll never forget him. I actually interviewed him face to face. I think I've gone to somewhere like Stafford Services or something. And it was for a sales role, very much a proactive sales role, cold calling, hitting the phones, bringing in new business. And as I went through his CV after we'd done the, get to know you and all the values and whatever, he was like, I kept saying to him, like, I'm not sure this is going to be a good fit. It's really, really proactive sales. And he was like, yeah, 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 that I really want this job. I really want this job. And when I went through for the reasons why he'd left all of his other jobs, it was because he didn't like doing like just sitting there doing cold calling and bashing the phones all the time. And I was like, but that's exactly what this job is. And he was
Mm.
still adamant, so people he got it so into his head. And I think actually that interview was a massive catalyst for me. And this has got to be 20 odd years ago for me reversing the way that I interviewed because I'd been taught, as we tend to be in the recruitment industry, here's the job's description, here's their CV, build your interview around what the client's looking for. And it doesn't bloody work. I mean,
Yeah.
it can do, but I'm kind of that's almost a little bit more luck than judgment. So
Yeah. Well, I think something else I've heard you mention is that you don't just fill roles, but you build growth engines. So can you unpack that for us? I mean, what does great recruitment look like when you're scaling fast?
so again, I like to keep it really simple. Okay. So when you're scaling fast, or if you want to scale fast, I do think the recruitment is the bedrock underneath it. So I always say there's a couple of mistakes that I see founders make. So if they're growing really busy and they're really quickly and they're very, very busy, that juggling all the different plates, spinning plates and stuff, what happens is people tend to get I don't mean this in a derogatory way, let's say minions or grunt labor, people at the lower levels to
Yeah.
do the delivery and to do the what's it. Now, when you're a busy founder trying to do all the things anyway, that's kind of the last thing you want to do is now give yourself a direct report who needs quite a lot of time and input and supervision and such like. What you want to do is you want to be looking at you know, taking somebody on who's a higher level, who can kind of, who's quite happy to roll their sleeves up and get their hands dirty for a little while, but who that they can then build their teams below them. So I always say, particularly if you're a funded founder, to focus on senior leadership team and your sales and marketing first. Okay, so because again, I've seen people that they get so into the reads of um, getting the product right, the service delivery right, and making sure they've got all these things happening, take people on to deliver the service, make sure they're ready for all the customers that are going to come whizzing through their door, the minute they open or get the website live or whatever. And then of course it's crickets, isn't it? And then you've got the headache of making people redundant, worrying about how you're going to pay everybody. So get the sales, get the sales in and worry about how you deliver it later. So those would be the two things that I'd say where to build that growth machine.
Yeah.
That would be the probably the best thing that I could say.
I think you said one thing there which really has stuck in my mind just like conversations. Instead of like recruiting a low level staff yourself directly, to find a senior person who can then do that recruitment for you, that is such a smart move, because that hasn't occurred to me, because I've fallen into the trap of just recruit someone at the level that they're needed and do all the onboarding and all the admin and are you all right, how are you getting on, all of that. And again, if you lose them you have to do it all again, whereas if you've got someone who's senior, they can do all of that for you, and you just say, right, Fred, go and recruit a new blah blah blah, go, I want another one of these and I want another one of those, do it, and then you can oversee how they're doing it. Yeah, I mean that is such a smart move. It's just
Yeah.
obvious, but I wouldn't have thought of that.
Yeah,
It's,
it's obvious when someone says it, isn't it? And that's probably something that only occurred to me, what, even 5, 10 years ago, to be honest with you. So, yeah, that would definitely be my advice. That's easier said than done if you haven't got funding. So if you're a sole trader or a solo entrepreneur you might not be quite bootstrapping it. So let's say you're doing okay, but like you're working all the hours God sends, you never see the kids, you're working longer and earning less or whatever, but you've got fairly regular money coming in. Recruitment doesn't always mean that you have to take on an employee. So if you can't afford to take on somebody at a higher level, I would say don't look at taking on an employee at a lower level. Look at what can be automated and outsourced. Okay, but how you find your VAs or whatever you're going to outsource, marketing, loads of people do fractional this, that, and the other now, right? So whether it be a fractional FD or a fractional marketer or a VA, this exactly the same principles as you'll find in there apply, because you've got to make sure you find the right person, that you've got the right job spec. You still need a job spec for them, even though they're not an employee. They need to know what they need to do. You need to know what they need to do. You still need proper onboarding. You still need proper processes. But the good thing is that you can flex that up and down until you're at a point where you're like, right, now I can make my first hire, and that will be a higher level, more senior person and or a salesperson. Bring
makes
them in.
sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. I've got another question for you now, but you've kind of preempted it with some of the things you already said, because I was going to say, from your experience, what are the biggest mistakes founders make when they're trying to scale their teams, and how can they avoid them? But you've kind of like covered that really.
I've
But really,
covered a few things. Yeah. There's probably a couple more, Paul. And I think one of the things will be not hiring quick enough.
yeah,
So putting it off for too long for whatever reason. And there's lots of them. Yeah, I'm not sure I can afford it. We tried that before. It was an absolute shit show. So I'm not sure that having employees is right for me. All of these different things, and not appreciating how long it can take. So I will often get calls going, I need an XYZ. When do you want them to start? Ideally yesterday. And it's like, well, whilst us recruiters can often find people at very short notice and can turn it around, if you really want a considered and thorough recruitment process, you need to start looking, or at least start the ball rolling 2 or 3 months beforehand, and
yeah,
perhaps even more if it's more senior or niche level role. So I think that's the thing. And also it being reactive. People don't have a people strategy. They don't think about it. They'll have a marketing strategy, business growth strategy, sales strategy, no people strategy. So it's
but the
like, well,
people,
who's going to do all these things?
yeah, so that underpins all of that, doesn't it? So it's
Yeah.
got a top of the pile, I would have thought.
Yeah. There's a great book called something like The Who, Not the How. And I can't remember who wrote it now, but that's a great book, and that's the premise of it. Don't think about how you're gonna do things, how you're gonna grow the business. Think about who can you bring in to do the growth bit.
Mm.
Bring in the person who knows how to do it.
Yeah, I'm gonna look that up after because I'm definitely gonna buy your book because that sounds really relevant to what I'm going to be doing, and it sounds very interesting. And the who, not the how. Right, that's another one I've got to Google afterwards then.
Yeah.
But I know I could talk all day, as I said before, but for anyone listening, because we're coming towards the end now, finally, if someone who's ready to scale but they're not really sure where to start, what's the first thing you'd recommend they focus on?
Oh, in terms of people and getting a people strategy, or
Yeah, yeah, I think you've kind of again the people
yeah.
strategy, you know.
Yeah, in terms of people. So again, another book that I love, which has been around for decades, is the E Myth, or the E Myth
Oh,
Revisited, I think it is now, by Michael E. Gerber.
yeah.
And one of the things that really stuck with me in that book is that you need to basically prepare for the size of company that you want, not the size of company that you have. So if now, while you're really small, let's just say your dream's to get to, I don't know, 10 million turnover. What does a 10 million turnover business look like? So what departments do you have? What people do you have in place? Sketch out an organization chart for that. Right, your name's going to be in all the boxes probably at this stage. Possibly you might have a few other people already on board, and then you get the processes and procedures in place that are right for a 10 million turnover business. Because what most founders, myself included, and repeatedly, not even just once, what most founders do is we kind of try to build the processes and procedures as we scale.
Mm,
And that's really hard because you're trying to do all that when you're getting busier and busier and more and more stretched. So if you've got those in place early on, then that would be the first place I would suggest you start. And a
yeah,
very simple sketch out an org chart of what it looks like, future org chart, not what you've got now, and you work towards that.
yeah, that's music to my ears, Sarah, because I think my background IT, I'm very systems oriented, very organized. Project manager, I used to be very organized, spreadsheets, files, folders, naming standards, blah, 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 all of that. And I can certainly see the value of going through although writing down a set of instructions in the form of something like an SOP, it's not the most exciting thing, but I can see the value of, well, if you've got it all well documented and you've got a video and it's all well defined, when you're really busy and you need to plug something in really quickly, instead of having to sit down and go through all that manually, you just say, okay, here we are. Here's the video. Here's the SOP. Have a read. Then we'll meet. What did you need to, what questions do you have? Rather than have to go and do that all manually every time. And also, it's like people like McDonald's, they have a standard operating procedure for all the way they cook their burgers, their operations procedures, manuals, and it's systemized so they can roll it out anywhere really quickly and really efficiently and plug people in and efficient and good to go. So I can see the value in that, rather than leaving it to thinking, oh God, we've got 100 staff and we haven't even written down how we do this, and then trying to do it then and because everyone will disagree and oh no, we don't do it that way, we do it this way. So chaos.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And also, it delivers that consistency for your clients and your customers as well. So, I
Absolutely.
mean, we all know that McDonald's doesn't provide the best food in the world or the best service or the best nutritional value. Okay. When we do go to McDonald's, if people go, we go because it's consistent. You
Yeah.
know, on a holiday in Istanbul, don't know where to go to eat. Oh, look, there's a McDonald's over there. I know the Big Mac's going to taste exactly the same as it does in Birmingham, for example.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, so and it's that consistency that means people come back time and time again. I mean, how many times has somebody said, "Oh, shall we go to so and so restaurant?" And you go, "Oh, do you know what? They were fabulous the first time I went. Second time, not so much. It's a bit hit and miss. I don't know, should we risk it?" And
Yes.
then you go, "No, let's not risk it. Let's go somewhere that we know is consistent."
Yeah, which is a real.
And you lose business through not being consistent, and I've got to put my hands up. I'm not there yet. I haven't got all of the right processes and procedures in place. As I say in the book, if I'd done everything I told my clients to, my business would be much bigger and I would be much less hands-on. So, but it's that physician heal thyself kind of
Yeah.
situation, isn't it?
No, this is also interesting because again, as I said to you before, I'm setting up a business with a colleague of mine, and I totally recognise the importance of having not only good processes for the sake of it, but having things like, regular client calls. Are you okay? Are you happy with the results? And always to, if something's gone wrong or something hasn't gone as well as you like, is to preempt that, because it's always better to preempt a call with the client rather than they find out and call you, because then you're on the back foot. But managing all that proactively and having some systems, even if it's like a calendar that someone's, 12th of February, you've got to give this customer a call and find out how they're getting on. Making sure that all happens in a systemized fashion, rather than just trying to remember, oh, I must give Fred a call to see how he's getting on with that new recruit that we put in his place the other
Yeah.
day. All those, because it stops churn, doesn't it? It helps to retain those clients, so that even if they had a bad experience, because you preempted that bad experience and say, look, sorry, something went wrong here, but we've preempted it and this is what we're going to do to fix it, rather than the client coming to you with a problem. It's just so much better, isn't it, to handle it that way, and it's very proactive. And I think, if a problem's preempted like that, someone's much more inclined to stay with you than if they find out for themselves and you've left it too late. It's just being proactive and being open and honest. And because we're all trying to grow our businesses, but if you get a lot of churn, if you recruit 5 new customers but you lose 5, what a waste. So
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
well, look, I'm gonna have to. I think we should draw this amazing conversation to close, because I could carry on talking to you for ages and ages. But Sarah, it's been amazing to have you here. But one final question: I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be very interested in talking to you. So, what would be the best way for them to contact you? I mean, we're going to put some details in the description below, but how would be the best for them to get in touch?
Probably by email, which is sarah@recruitrecruit.co.uk, or LinkedIn. Although bear with me on LinkedIn. I'm
Oh,
not brilliant on LinkedIn. I'm getting much better on LinkedIn.
brilliant. I'm sure you're going to get a lot of emails filling your inbox pretty soon as a result of this. So, Sarah, thank you very much for joining me today. It's been truly a rare, true pleasure to speak to you. I've really enjoyed the conversation, and we'll stay in touch, I hope.
Yeah, absolutely, Paul. Thanks very much for having me along.
Pleasure.